Okay, so you're here, which means you're ready to dive deep into Bhutanese culture.
Yeah, like really get under the surface.
Right, but I bet you don't want to get stuck in like a textbook worth of details.
Exactly. It's about getting to the heart of it.
Exactly. So consider this your express lane to Bhutan.
Your fast track to feeling like you really get what makes this Himalayan kingdom tick.
I like that. Okay, so to get us started,
Bhutan, it's known for its serenity right off the bat.
definitely it's like stepping into a postcard.
But it's more than just beautiful scenery.
Right, you can feel this like really deep sense of tradition everywhere.
And what's interesting is how intentional they are about preserving it.
Yes. The Bhutanese people and their government, they're really dedicated to protecting their cultural identity.
It's pretty remarkable, actually.
Okay, so today we're going to break down all the key elements of Bhutanese culture,
We'll go deep into their religion.
explore those unique traditions around birth, marriage, and death,
Feel the energy of their festivals.
unpack their super distinctive clothing,
Get a taste for their cuisine.
and appreciate their art and architecture.
Ready to go?
Absolutely. Let's start with religion because it's like the foundation of everything else.
Couldn't agree more. It's more than just belief. It permeates every aspect of Bhutanese life.
Exactly. Now, Vajrayana Buddhism, that's the dominant force, right?
Yeah, you'll find pockets of Hinduism, particularly in the south.
Right. But it's this specific branch of Buddhism, this Vajrayana Buddhism, that really shapes the culture.
Exactly. It's known for its tantric practices, all the symbolism you see.
And you see that influence everywhere.
It's not subtle.
Definitely the landscape itself tells a story.
Oh, yeah. You've got monasteries perched on hillsides. Those unique stupas, or chortens as they're called, dotting the landscape.
Yeah, and the incredible detail of the temples, the lakhangs.
Don't forget those prayer flags.
Oh, yes, those colorful squares everywhere.
They're not just decoration. They carry prayers and good vibes on the wind.
I love that idea. And what about the zongs?
Ah, the zongs. Those are special.
They're not just religious buildings tucked away somewhere. They're right in the center of things.
Exactly. Each district has one serving as both a religious center and an administrative hub.
It's like a physical representation of how spirituality and daily life are intertwined.
Right. It's this fascinating blend of the sacred and the secular.
Now, beyond the zongs you mentioned, monasteries, often in very secluded areas.
Yeah, those are places where monks dedicate their lives to meditation study and serious spiritual practice.
It's amazing to think about kids going to those monasteries at a young age.
Right, dedicating years to learning Buddhist teachings.
That's a level of commitment you don't see very often.
Definitely. But it's not just the monks. Religion is woven into everyday life for everyone,
So true. It's in the little things.
like offering a morsel of food to the deities before a meal.
A small gesture with a big meaning.
Exactly. It shows how respect for the spiritual is just ingrained in their daily routine.
And of course, religion plays a huge role in those big life moments, too.
Birth, marriage, death.
Yeah.
The monks and the rituals are central to it all.
Okay, let's talk about those life events, starting with birth.
It's a joyful occasion, as it should be.
And I read that there's no real preference for boys over girls,
Yeah, that's a really beautiful aspect of their culture.
especially considering how common gender bias is in so many other places.
It really speaks to their values.
Do you think this stems directly from Buddhist teachings, or is it more of a broader cultural evolution?
It's probably a bit of both. Buddhist philosophy emphasizes the potential for enlightenment in everyone, regardless of gender.
Right.
And over time, that's become deeply ingrained in their social fabric.
So it's a combination of spiritual guidance and cultural adaptation.
Exactly. Now, they do have some interesting customs surrounding childbirth.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about those.
Well, for the first 3 days after a baby is born, the mother and child are kind of in seclusion.
No visitors.
Nope. It's time for bonding and recovery.
And then after that, there's a purification ritual to welcome the child into the community.
It's a beautiful ceremony.
And then there's the whole naming tradition, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, it's unique. They don't have family surnames.
Instead, a local lama gives the child a name made up of two traditional Buddhist names.
The second one often hints at the gender.
It's like they're placing the emphasis on the individual's spiritual identity right from the start.
Exactly. It's a beautiful way to connect the child to their heritage.
Now, moving on to marriage, from what I read, it's typically a pretty simple affair.
Yeah, compared to some cultures, it's much more low-key.
Now, there was mention of cousin marriage as a traditional practice. Is that still a common?
It's less so these days. Modern preferences are moving away from that.
It's interesting how even the most established traditions can evolve.
Times change, perspectives shift.
And there's that interesting custom in some regions where the groom moves in with the bride's family.
Yeah, that's a pretty big departure from what we're used to in many Western cultures.
It shows how diverse family structures can be.
For sure now, when it comes to death.
That's a big one.
Definitely. But the Bhutanese view it through the lens of reincarnation.
So it's not seen as the end, but as a transition.
Exactly. Another stage in the cycle of rebirth.
That must have a profound impact on how they approach death and dying.
It definitely shapes their perspective. Death isn't something to be feared, but a natural part of life's journey.
So tell me about their funeral practices.
Well, they're very important. There are extensive prayers. They raise prayer flags inscribed with the deceased's name.
Those prayer flags, they're everywhere.
They are, and they play a key role in guiding the soul in the afterlife.
Interesting. And what about the monks? What's their role?
They perform specific ceremonies to help the soul on its journey.
So it's a very spiritual process.
Absolutely. But it's also very communal. Relatives and neighbors gather to offer support.
It's a time for the community to come together.
Exactly. They share food stories, memories. It's about celebrating the life that was lived.
Okay, so let's move on to something a little more upbeat. The festivals, or sekas.
Ah, the Sekis. Those are incredible.
From what I've read, they're like the heart and soul of Bhutanese culture.
They're more than just festivals. They're huge celebrations held in the zongs, those impressive fortress monasteries.
It's like the whole community comes together.
Exactly. It's all about shared joy, cultural pride, and a deep connection to their spiritual heritage.
Now, these sakas, they're not just random events, right? There's a specific schedule.
They're timed according to the lunar calendar, usually on the 10th day of the month.
And some of the most famous ones take place in Thimphu, Paro, and Punakha.
Those are the big ones they attract people from all over.
Now, the highlight of the sekas seems to be the cham dance.
The cham dance is truly a spectacle.
I've seen pictures. It's mesmerizing.
Imagine monks and even lay people dressed in these incredibly elaborate silk robes and masks.
And they're reenacting scenes from the life of Guru Rinpoche.
The guy who brought Buddhism to Bhutan. It's like a living history lesson, but also a deeply spiritual performance.
I can only imagine. And on the final day of the festival, they unveiled this huge silk scroll called a thongdrol.
Yeah, it's believed that simply seeing it can cleanse you of your sins.
Wow, that's powerful.
It shows how important these festivals are to the Bhutanese people.
It's like a spiritual reset button.
In a way, yeah, okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about their traditional clothing.
Ah, yes, the outfits. They're so distinctive.
It's not just fashion, it's mandatory in certain settings.
You have to wear traditional dress in government offices, schools, and for special occasions.
It's a powerful way to maintain their cultural identity.
So tell me about the men's attire, the Gho.
The Gho, it's basically a knee-length robe tied with a belt.
Sounds pretty practical.
It is. It's comfortable and easy to move around in, and that big pouch in the front.
Oh, yeah. What's that all about?
Traditionally, it was used to carry food bowls, tools, all sorts of essentials.
It's like a built-in backpack.
Exactly. These days, guys might keep their phones in there.
Tradition meets modernity.
Love it. Now for the women. It's the Kira, an ankle-length wraparound dress, also with a belt.
They're very elegant.
They pair it with a long-sleeved blouse called a wanju and a short jacket called a tego.
And the fabrics are often incredibly detailed.
Yeah, the patterns and the quality can signify the wearer's social standing and region.
It's like clothing as a social language.
Exactly. Now we can't forget the scarves.
Oh, right. Those are important too.
Men wear the kabni. Women wear the rachu when they're entering zongs or attending official events.
It's a sign of respect.
Exactly. It adds a layer of formality.
It's all these little details that really give you a sense of how much they value their heritage.
It's woven into every aspect of life. Okay, ready to talk about food?
Always. Let's hear about Bhutanese cuisine.
Well, it's known for being simple, but incredibly flavorful.
I heard they really love their chilies and cheese.
That's an understatement. Chilies are in almost everything.
What about their national dish, imadachi?
Ah, imadachi. It's basically chilies cooked in a cheesy sauce.
Sounds intense.
It can be, but it's delicious. Traditionally, they cook in earthen pots and eat with their hands.
Very traditional.
While you'll find more modern restaurants in cities, the old ways are still cherished.
It's that balance again, tradition and modernity.
Exactly. So beyond imadachi, what else should we try?
Give me the highlights.
We got to try momos, those steamed dumplings filled with meat, cheese, or veggies.
Love a good dumpling.
Then there's pakshapa pork, cooked with radish. And yes, you guessed it, more chilies.
Can't escape the chilies.
And to wash it all down, you have suja traditional butter tea.
Never tried that.
It's perfect for the cooler highland regions. Oh, and don't forget the red rice.
Red rice.
Yeah, that's their staple grain. Goes with everything.
Bhutanese food sounds like a flavor adventure.
All right. Moving on to arts and literature.
Tell me about their literary traditions.
Well, for centuries, it was primarily oral storytelling.
Passing down religious teachings, folk tales, and moral lessons through the generations.
Exactly. But they do have a written tradition as well.
What language do they write in?
Mainly Dzongkha, their national language, and classical Tibetan, which is used for religious scriptures.
Makes sense. What about music and dance?
Well, they got a wide range from folk songs to religious chants.
And they use some pretty unique instruments, right?
Oh, yeah, you've got the dungchen, those long horns used in religious ceremony.
I've seen pictures of those. They're huge.
They are. Then you have more traditional instruments like the dramian, a kind of lute, and the ling, a flute.
And of course, we can't forget the cham dance.
That's not just a dance, it's a whole art form.
A beautiful blend of spirituality, history, and athleticism.
Exactly. Okay. Last but not least, let's talk about art and architecture.
Bhutanese architecture is so unique.
It's instantly recognizable, those sloping roofs, the intricate woodwork, the use of natural materials like stone and earth.
It's all very organic.
And did you know they traditionally don't use nails in their construction?
Really?
Yeah. It's all about interlocking joints and the natural strength of the materials.
That's amazing, and you'll often see phallic symbols painted on buildings.
Yeah, that's a traditional belief. It wards off evil spirits.
It's a fascinating blend of Buddhism and older animistic traditions.
It is. It shows how deeply rooted their culture is.
So to wrap things up, it's clear that Bhutanese culture is not just something they observe, it's a way of life.
It's woven into the fabric of their society.
They have this incredible respect for tradition, spirituality, and sustainability.
And you see it in everything from their festivals to their clothing to their food.
It's what gives Bhutan its unique charm and authenticity.
It's a nation deeply connected to its roots.
So as we end this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question.
All right, hit me.
In an increasingly globalized world, how does a country's dedication to preserving its culture impact its future?
That's a great question.
What can other societies learn from Bhutan's example?
It's definitely something to ponder.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of Bhutanese culture.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring.